So we've qualified more than 70 sites now between the US and Europe. This is a great study, a great protocol. It is one of the first head-to-heads in TAVR. And so this registration study will be a head-to-head against standard of care, meaning the two that are in the market. Non-inferiority is the primary endpoint. And then that's obviously certainly achievable we already know with the data we have today, that shouldn't change too much.
All right, welcome back inside our Proactive Newsroom. And joining me now is Wayne Paterson. He is the CEO of Anteris Technologies. And Wayne, it's great to see you. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so the company out with your first quarter financials for 2025. This after obviously your IPO, which was very successful. Maybe Wayne, just give everyone an idea about the company and more importantly about that first quarter that you saw financially.
Sure. So briefly, if you don't know the company, we operate in the structural heart space, specifically the therapeutic area of aortic valve replacement or TAVR. It's about a $10 billion TAM, and we've been in development for a number of years from a blank sheet of paper. So we designed a product in conjunction with physicians to meet a gap that was in the market, which was clinical. We achieved that. We're about 30%, give or take, clinically superior to the market leader in that $10 billion TAM, who has about 70% market share. Deliverability, ease of use, also much better, and that's objective data proven in studies so far. So we're in pretty good shape. We came through the IPO that was well subscribed, probably 2.5x to what we wanted at the right price, and just about on the cusp to begin our pivotal study, our final study before registration.
Yeah. So tell me about DurAVR, this transcatheter heart valve that you were talking about, and you mentioned that how it racks up against the peers, and that's kind of what the clinical trial will do is to see where you're at and how much further you can go ahead.
Yeah. So to be clear on the patient numbers, and I have an extensive career in healthcare, so 25 years in big pharma, Roche and Merck around the world, and so this is not my first rodeo, but certainly with this data, you're talking about a fatal disease. Where there's no pharmacotherapy to treat these patients, who basically switch out a piece of the anatomy, which is the aortic valve. Now, there were two products in the market, have been for a decade, that don't actually take you out of the disease state. They're not curative by definition. And there's a reason for that. It's the design of the valve is not anatomically or physiologically correct. Now, when we came at this, we were much later into the market, of course, a smaller company to the two players there. I assembled a team of doctors from the biggest centers in the US down here in Minneapolis. First day and said, what do you need? Not knowing whether we could achieve that or not, we obviously eventually did. We created the first new class of valve to go into these patients that had been introduced in a decade. By definition, we had to change the design. That gave us clinical results that were outside of the disease state. So this is the first time you really get a pre-disease blood pressure measurement called a mean gradient, which is how they define this disease. And we are well over 130 patients into this already. So we've got plenty of objective data. We've already had an FDA study here in the States, lots of European patients as well. So the data stacks up and is, of course, third-party adjudicated. It's very well known on the podium. And so this product has a lot of profile.
Yeah, and so much so that in fact you've submitted during the quarter your IDE, which is basically your investigational device exemption. That allows you sort of to move a lot through the process a lot quicker. Is that accurate?
Yeah, correct. And that's on the back of obviously the previous FDA study that we had done called an EFS, which is kind of the precursor to your IDE. That goes well. Safety, efficacy, of course, both have to be proven. And that submission went in on time. I think the FDA, for reasons that are obvious, if you're here in the States, are under the hammer a little bit, but certainly we're getting through that and we're dealing with the responses and things right now. So very confident that we're in line with our public statements of when we will get the approval and when the study will start, first patients being Q3 of this year.
Yeah. Wayne, obviously a lot of things happening in that quarter, a lot of things ahead. And you mentioned that first patient, that paradigm trial, Q3 2025. Is that the main focus now moving forward with the company? I know you've added a number of staff. You've also put in your manufacturing. There's a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes as well.
Yeah, and it's a great question, Stephen. I think shareholders from the outside often don't realize that there's a whole company behind what you do. Beyond the product, beyond the trials. And of course, as you ramp up for a trial, you incrementally are adding your field headcount, which are the clinical trial monitors. Of course, you use third-party CROs in the middle of that. So we've qualified more than 70 sites now between the US and Europe. This is a great study, a great protocol. It is one of the first head-to-heads in TAVR. And so this registration study will be a head-to-head against standard of care, meaning the two that are in the market. Non-inferiority is the primary endpoint. And then that's obviously certainly achievable we already know with the data we have today, that shouldn't change too much. It's not a drug, it's a mechanical device, so you pretty much know where you're going to stand. On the back of that, you ramp up your manufacturing, of course. We've in Minneapolis have a quite a big manufacturing facility that is, of course, qualified as it needs to be from a QC point of view as well. So we can't be just making this stuff in someone's garage. Obviously, it goes into humans. And so there's a lot of people that you add along the way who are expert in this area to get to the point of commercialization. So we've incrementally ramped that up. We've had to do a bit more to build the clinical trial stock versus the stock that we've used before in other trials. And that clinical trial stock starts to grow your processes and your characterization of the manufacturing to make sure you can get it to scale as you launch 2 years from now. And so we're in the middle of that process. It does require a few extra resources, of course, but you don't want to run out of product or you don't want to make bad product, obviously.
Absolutely. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Wayne, Q1 was busy, Q2 is busy, and it sounds like the rest of the year is going to be equal as well. Good to talk to you. Thanks for giving us a quick update, and we'll talk soon, okay?
Perfect. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
All right, there's Wayne Paterson. He's the CEO of Anteris Technologies.